Hi everyone, and welcome back to Zero to Hero, episode 5 this time. In this episode, we actually hit Keystone Master, which is, I won't say a big milestone, but it's a milestone, and we are getting like closer and closer to Hero. So first thing first, let's take a look at our vault, what we got. And honestly, not too exciting. We do end up picking up the gloves here, which is it's gonna push us from 418, I believe, all the way to 420 eye level, which is it's a start. It's something. We're getting there, you know. As well as like getting closer to the hero, we're also getting more and more gear. So yeah, this video we do hit KSM, but my main point with this video is actually to share that. Which is not really easy because this video actually comes from like almost like a vulnerable place, but I want to like own up to mistakes. So the thing is that if you look at the damage meters, like this specific like 16 freehold was really bad for me. Not only did I disconnect in the beginning of the pulls, meaning that I lost like that really big opening pull, but this is like a good example of like my like overall. Like I have been pushing into the higher keys, but I haven't really been able to do like what's required damage. So I feel like I've been like carried like all the way here, and like getting to these higher keys, you get to a point where you just can't really get carried the same way you could with like the lower keys. Here you actually, if you want to time it, you actually have to pull in your weight, right? You have to actually like put out some damage. And my struggle of this has simply just been that I haven't been able to pull that amount of damage. I mean, I feel like I do. Like this is if you look at damage, this is really really bad. But usually, I feel like I'm okay-ish. But usually, you know, I'm a player that's like usually on top, right? So like, why am I not doing that on the warlock? Is it the warlock that just sucks? Well, no, it's not. Warlock, especially destruction warlock, actually do have quite a bit of like bursting potential, and I can see it myself when everything aligns. I can actually have a pretty decent burst. So I was like, it's like the overall damage that's like, you know, bad for my take, and I'm like trying to like rationalize it, you know, like analyze myself, like what is wrong here. And I, you know, was really quickly to just say, oh, it's gear. And I feel like I'm not the only player that does that, you know, that like it's easy to accept that, you know what, I'm just bad geared. That's it. You know, as soon as I get a little bit more gear, then, you know, everything will just fall into place automatically. And the thing is, it won't. But we will get into what like actually goes wrong and what I do to fix my damage issues. We actually do end up timing this freehold, even though I did absolutely the worst damage, and I actually push us into an 18 underwood red, which really highlighted for me how like bad this is. Like I wouldn't be able to push further until I figured out what was going wrong. So here though is not just damage wise, because I actually do end up having deaths that could have been avoided because I didn't really pay attention. And that's the thing, again, when you push up into these key brackets here, you need to be ready for all the stuff of things, right? Like you see here, I get fixated and I don't have any defense up at all. And then going into the second boss, this is where like the party falls like through, because we don't really pick up the worms, and then the tank places the frontals right in front of us and he dies. I think some worms get off and he gets annoyed by us. And what happens actually is that, you know, then they all of a sudden they need to like point fingers, and they're like, one of them is like, hey, warlock, you're doing extremely like low damage, like it. And I see here one person is already leaving, so I know that this was like not good. But I get called out, and I have to be honest, like that was kind of took it like a little bit personal, right? So basically a really really nice I got a comment on my latest video of a guy asking me why I don't, because I was complaining about not having Infernal up all the time and it being a 3-minute cooldown, and I thought that was really weird. Why? And he asked me, why are you not playing with the talent that makes it reduces its cooldown like every time you use a shot? And I was like, well, I mean, okay, like that's fair question. And he also mentioned, like, I also mentioned that with the tier set, that, like, you know, I really don't like the tier set and like its interaction with it. And he again pointed out, was like, you do realize that there's like talents that makes it, you know, better and like work more coherent. And I was like, yeah, but like I was just like, yeah. And that was like when he actually kind of, and I really like appreciate actually him doing it, because what he actually did was like, you know, he actually made me question the talents I had. And I have to be really honest, and this is like what I'm like most ashamed of. I did go into Wowhead, and I was like, when I first hit max level, I was like looking at the different talents, and I was like, yep, this sounds good. And then I just went into dungeons, and I honestly just never thought about my talents again, which is a huge no-no. Like, and I can't believe I actually did that, because going into, like, if I play a tank or if I play other classes and specs I'm more familiar with, I will, like, you know, really be aware of like the different talents, and I will realize that these talents have a different, like, you know, if I go into one dungeon, I might want some talent other than others, you know, like, but like with the warlock, I just completely like locked in on like, this is like what, this is the only talent I wanted. So actually like opening up and like realizing that, hey, maybe this talent trees that I'm using might not be the best, was really eye-opening. But yeah, changing the talents did so much like wonder for my damage, and also for like the playstyle of the warlock, the destruction warlock. Became a lot faster and a lot more like fun for me. As I mentioned before, like, you know, I enjoy cooldown reduction gameplay. Like I did actually play a little bit of Destruction Warlock back in Shadowlands, and I'm familiar with this talent. For me, it was always called like Wilfred, because that was a legendary that reduces the Infernal's cooldown. But yeah, it's been so much more fun, and it's so much more engaging, I think, as well as with the tier set. So I mentioned before how the tier set didn't really click with me, but that's also because I had this really extremely bad habit of getting all my bursts out and then using my Demon Fire to, like, you know, get the damage buff that you get from that. Like, you know, you want to get that before you actually use your buff. But I was like afraid of like everything dying before I could get it off. Now actually putting faith into it, which sounds weird, but actually just like, no, you really have to like force yourself to use it. And then if things die afterwards, then things just have died, right? Like that's just how it is. But actually, when I forced myself to do that, what I realized was that, well, things didn't really have to die, didn't die just because I used Demon Fire, just because they used 2 more seconds to get my immolation out on like multiple targets. And that's also the thing, because I was like thinking about like, do I need to get it on like, if I have a huge pack, do I need to spend like 7 seconds to push immolate on everything? But no, you don't. Just a few targets, and then a Demon Fire will also, you know, deal AoE damage, and actually a fair bit of AoE damage, as you see right here on your screen. But what I really wanted to like highlight with this like Dragonflight one was like how many times I have Infernal. So like I think like throughout the whole run here, it's like 6 or 7 Infernals I get out, which is a lot more than just before. And that is gonna like really gonna like pop up my overall damage. So thank you for that, like, you know, comment on YouTube to like point out that like, hey, maybe you should like look at your talents, because that was a huge game changer for me. And the reason why I feel like this is really important to share, also with like with my own psyche and everything, is that it's really okay not to know everything. Playing WoW, it's a super like complicated game, especially like learning new specs and new classes, right? It's not only do you need to learn like the dungeons and stuff like that, and I of course have like at this point learned the dungeons, but you still need to learn like how your class specifically interacts with those dungeons, like other things you can use your utility on than others. There's a lot of like, you know, aspects and a lot of things you need to be aware of. So it's also like, you really not to be like hard on yourself to not knowing everything. But at the same time, how important it is for you not to close off and being like, oh, it's just gear. That's what the problem is. It's not me who has to change anything. It's the game around me that's like, oh, I'm not doing like, high damage because I'm just playing with people who are like way higher than me. Like, of course I can't compete with that. Don't cut yourself some slack on that. Like, be understanding of like, hey, you can't know everything, but also realize that there's a time and place to learn these kind of things. And then again, I just want to point out, like, pushing into these hierarchies, I've been kind of like taking it for granted how survivable the warlock is. That like I just like, oh, I can deal with everything. And you kind of realize pulling into these hierarchies, especially when you are a little bit undergeared, that no, you can't survive everything. And as you can see here, I also just do mistakes with like there's upheaval right here, and I move a little bit too early, I get panic, go back, get like hit by the orbs and stuff like that, and I die because like I also get hit by the frontal. And yeah, it's okay to do mistakes like this, as long as like you learn from them, as long as you like improve yourself as like a player, be like, mindful of like the things that you do wrong. It's really been like, a blessing in disguise to like record my gameplay and looking back at it, because you do learn like a lot of it. Like, you do really learn a lot. Like, for example, right there with the clip right before, like I honestly did not know that what I actually died from was getting hit by the frontal. I mean, I know the frontal was there, but I actually didn't realize that was actually what killed me, because I was too focused on the orbs and the balls. Like, if I actually had paid a mind to where the boss was, then maybe I have lived in that situation. And again, that's not to like be totally harsh on yourself, like, but if you want to improve and you want to be better at the game, then you really need to start like be a little bit critical of yourself, and not just cut yourself some slack when it gets hard or when you feel dumb, because if anything, I this game will definitely make you feel dumb sometimes. But yeah, we are getting almost there. Like back in the 17 Dragonflight pushed us to 1980s. And going into this Nefarious here, because that's what I needed. That was the only thing I really didn't have timed this. Well, that's not true. I timed it before, but I mean, like, I hadn't played it this week. And this run is actually what's gonna push us into KSM. But I also think this run is extremely interesting from a tank perspective. Because I really want to, like, no hate to this tank at all, but this is something I kind of want to, like, highlight here. So, spoiler alert, we actually do end up timing it, this dungeon, but it is actually going to be, like, super close. And what is interesting, or at least what I think is interesting, is that we don't actually have that many devs going into, I think we have a few, 3 or 4 maybe. And our damage is on the okay-ish side, that I think it's appropriate for this eye level, and I mean the Keystone level. But it's not like we're getting like overly boosted. It's not like we have people who are just like, blasting away. But we do. What's actually going to cause us almost not time it, and is what I really want to highlight, is simply just that we're going so slow. And you probably noticed on the first pull, and actually, no, you probably noticed on every pull here, we don't really chain them into anything. We just take kind of like pull for pull, which of course is a like highlight of that the tank is inexperienced or isn't like sure, which I want to point out. It's fine that you feeling that way. No one like should yell at you, or like, if you're like nervous or like feeling unsure about this. But you also just need to understand that like going like timing a dungeon, especially when you push higher and higher, is the balance between comfort and speed. And what we're doing right now here is like putting if you're on a spectrum, it's like pulling all the way on the comfort side. Like, we are not doing anything that challenges us here. We're not like pulling anything that can like, like overly pull us that can like kill us or anything. But what we like sacrificing there is then the speed. And like on the same time, like you don't want to go and like do like these like huge insane pulls that's like super fast, but like incredibly dangerous, right? Because then you fall on the speed too, right? Like you won't like get through. So there's a balance here, and it's quite clear that the tank just chooses the comfort route, and he's not the only one who's doing it. And I really, just wanted to highlight that like that actually leads to a bunch of problems if you do tank like that. And if you're a tank watching this, as because you can see right here, I end up pulling these extra mobs because why not? Because I want to time this, I want to get faster. And that's like also like the point that I think is really important to realize if you're playing a tank, is that just because someone pulls for you does not mean that they are being rude or being, you know, an asshole. Actually, sometimes people pull to help you. You might not realize it, but that's actually what's like, you know, is going on. And again, like it's not black and white. It's not like that every time someone pulls for you, it's good. Sometimes there are people who just don't really understand the dungeon and just think, you know, they never play tank themselves, so they're like, oh, you can definitely survive this, and then just pull like 600 packs on you and you die, and you're like, what why did you do that? Like sometimes you have people who pull on you and then it's a mistake, and then that's on them, that's fine. But one of my biggest pet peeves are tanks that just basically have the mentality that if you pull, then you are tanking it. No. I'm sorry, but no. You're not gonna get very far with that mentality, in my opinion. And again, this is just to highlight that sometimes you need to challenge yourself. Sometimes you have to push yourself a little bit for what you think is comfortable. That's the only way you can figure out like how to, like what packs you can pull and what packs you can't. If you go in, like you have to like sacrifice like, you know, a death going into a dungeon for maybe the first time, pulling a little bit extra, sacrificing or like risking that you might die that one time, just so you can, you know for the rest of for the season that you can't really pull those two together, those packs, right? It's about learning. This way, we are not really getting any far. So yeah, we managed to get the last boss, but we still missed just a few percentage. We have 3 deaths, and you can tell like how close the timer is. That's why I think it's super important to like highlight this. But we do hit KSM, meaning that we are getting pretty close. We're almost there, right? We still have like a few bit to push, and we're definitely getting into the more like difficult keys, and where, as I have tried to like explain this video, it's also the place where you as a player are getting tested, right? This is where you need to start performing and actually start to like learn your class. You're not really getting further from this point unless you actually take the time to look at your class and look at your flaws and look at all that stuff and actually, you know, fixing it, or just like have an awareness of your errors. But yeah, that's it for this week. Thank you so much for watching and for like sticking along the challenge. I definitely see myself making this, getting to Keystone Hero before the next season starts. But we do have a few weeks ahead of us, still like playing this class, and I'm excited. Like actually changing the talents, actually like delving a little bit more deeper into the mechanics of the warlock, and actually like learning a little bit more, like, you know, the actual proper use of rotation. Well, not actually just using and like learning about it, but also just implementing it like more directly into my gameplay, forcing myself to do something that I think maybe is a little bit uncomfortable. I'm talking about with the using the demon fire and waiting a second to like burst when everyone else is doing it, like, you know, not caving into that. Feels a little bit awkward at first, but actually like forcing you to do that actually really makes the class so much more fun and better to play. So I'm actually starting to like have a lot of fun again on the warlock after struggling a little bit for last week with like, you know, the lower damage. So yeah, again, for the guy who commented on my YouTube channel last time, thank you so much for the feedback. I appreciate it super much. And if you have any other suggestions or questions, please ask away. And if not, then I'll just see you in the next video. Take care, everyone.